Have you ever seen a child who struggles to communicate suddenly smile while standing beside a horse? Or a child who avoids eye contact gently wrap both arms around an animal weighing more than 1,000 pounds? Scenes like these happen every day in equine therapy centers across the world. To many parents, they feel almost impossible to explain. Some describe them as life-changing, others call them unforgettable. But what if these moments aren't simply emotional stories? What if science can explain why they happen? For decades, researchers have been trying to answer a fascinating question. Why do horses seem to build such remarkable connections with children who have special needs? Is there something unique about these animals? Or is the answer hidden somewhere in the way horses have evolved alongside humans for thousands of years? Today, thousands of children participate in equine-assisted therapy in countries such as the United States, Canada, Germany, Australia, Brazil, and many others. Some are learning to improve their balance. Others are developing communication skills. Many are simply discovering confidence they never knew they had. Yet almost every family tells a similar story. The horse somehow became much more than part of the therapy. It became a trusted companion. But before we can understand why this happens, we first need to go back thousands of years, long before modern medicine, before rehabilitation centers, and before anyone imagined that one of humanity's oldest partners would one day help change the lives of children around the world. Long before horses became trusted therapy partners, they were simply wild animals struggling to survive. For millions of years, horses lived on open grasslands where danger could appear at any moment. Unlike predators, they couldn't rely on sharp claws or powerful teeth. Their greatest defense was something entirely different. They learned to observe everything: the slightest movement in the distance, a sudden change in the wind, an unfamiliar sound, even the posture of another animal nearby. Survival depended on noticing tiny details long before danger arrived. Over time, this extraordinary awareness became one of the horse's greatest strengths. Scientists call it heightened sensitivity to body language and environmental changes. Even today, domesticated horses continue to rely on these instincts. Instead of focusing mainly on sounds or words, horses constantly read posture, muscle tension, breathing patterns, facial expressions, and movement. In many ways, they communicate with the body before they communicate with anything else. This natural ability is one of the main reasons researchers became interested in studying horses for therapeutic purposes. Not because horses understand medical diagnoses. There is no evidence that a horse recognizes autism, cerebral palsy, or any other condition. Instead, horses respond to what every human body is silently communicating. And for children who often find spoken communication difficult, that creates a completely different kind of relationship. One built without expectations, without judgment, and surprisingly, without the need for many words. But if horses have possessed these abilities for thousands of years, who was the first person to realize they could actually help people heal? The idea of using horses as part of medical treatment is far older than most people realize. More than 2,000 years ago, the ancient Greek physician Hippocrates, often called the father of modern medicine, wrote about the physical benefits of horseback riding. He believed that riding could improve both the body and the mind, an idea that seemed extraordinary for its time. For centuries, however, these observations remained little more than scattered records. It wasn't until the 20th century that the medical community began taking them seriously. One event changed everything. In 1952, Danish rider Lise Hartel competed in the Olympic Games and won a silver medal in dressage. What made her achievement remarkable was that she had survived polio years earlier and had been left with partial paralysis. Hartel often spoke about how horseback riding became an essential part of her rehabilitation, helping her regain strength, balance, and confidence. Her story attracted worldwide attention. Doctors, therapists, and researchers began asking a new question: if horseback riding could help an adult recover from a serious neurological illness, could it also help children facing developmental and physical challenges? That question inspired decades of research. Universities launched clinical studies. Hospitals started collaborating with therapy centers. Specialized organizations were created to establish training standards and safety guidelines. What began as isolated observations slowly evolved into a recognized therapeutic approach used in many countries today. But one mystery still remained unsolved. If horses could benefit so many different children with so many different conditions, what exactly was happening inside the child's body during every single step the horse took? At first, many people assumed that equine-assisted therapy therapy works because children simply enjoy being around horses. But researchers discovered that the real explanation goes much deeper. It begins with something almost invisible. Every time a horse takes a single step, its body moves in 3 directions at once. It shifts forward and backward, side to side, and gently up and down. This 3-dimensional movement closely resembles the natural motion of the human pelvis during walking. In fact, when a child sits correctly on a walking horse, the brain receives movement patterns that are surprisingly similar to those produced during normal human walking. That is why therapists don't simply let the horse wander. Every step has a purpose. Every change in speed, direction, or terrain creates new information for the child's brain to process. Without even realizing it, the rider is constantly adjusting posture, activating muscles, improving balance, and strengthening coordination. A single therapy session can generate thousands of tiny postural corrections. These adjustments stimulate the nervous system again and again, encouraging the brain and body to work together more efficiently. This is one of the reasons equine-assisted therapy is used for children with a wide range of physical and neurological conditions. But something even more fascinating happens during these sessions. Unlike a treadmill, unlike exercise equipment, unlike any rehabilitation machine, the horse is alive. It reacts, it listens, it adapts, and that changes everything. Because while the child's body is learning through movement, their mind is quietly building a relationship with another living being, and that emotional connection may be just as important as the physical one. While the horse's movement helps the body, researchers believe something else may explain why many children become so engaged during therapy. Unlike humans, horses don't communicate through conversation. They don't care how many words a child can say. They don't expect eye contact. They don't judge unusual behaviors. Instead, they respond to consistency, calm movements, gentle touch, and body language. For many children with special needs, this creates a completely different social experience. There is no pressure to perform, no fear of saying the wrong thing, no expectation to behave according to social rules that may feel confusing or overwhelming. The horse simply reacts to what is happening in that moment. Therapists often describe this as a relationship built on immediate feedback. If the rider becomes tense, the horse may slow down or become more alert. If the child relaxes, the horse often responds with calmer, smoother movements. This constant exchange teaches something that cannot easily be explained with words. Trust, not because the horse is trying to teach it, but because trust naturally develops when 2 living beings begin understanding each other's signals. Researchers also believe that caring for the horse plays an important role. Brushing its coat, touching its mane, leading it with guidance from a therapist. These simple activities encourage responsibility, confidence, patience, and emotional connection. For many children, the horse is no longer just part of a therapy session. It becomes a friend they genuinely look forward to seeing. But if this connection is so powerful, can scientific studies actually measure its effects, or are they simply observing emotional stories? For many years, the benefits of equine-assisted therapy were supported mostly by personal stories. Parents shared remarkable experiences. Therapists observed meaningful progress. But scientists wanted something more. They wanted evidence. Over the last 2 decades, universities and medical institutions around the world have conducted dozens of studies to understand exactly how equine-assisted therapy affects children with special needs. Many of these studies focused on children with autism spectrum disorder, while others examined cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, developmental delays, and other neurological conditions. Although researchers emphasize that results vary from one child to another, several patterns have appeared repeatedly. Many children showed improvements in balance, posture, coordination, and core muscle control. Others demonstrated better attention during activities, increased social interaction, and greater willingness to communicate. Some studies also reported reductions in anxiety and repetitive behaviors during therapy programs, although scientists continue investigating exactly why these changes occur. Researchers are careful not to describe equine-assisted therapy as a cure. Instead, they refer to it as a valuable complementary therapy that can enhance other treatments when guided by qualified professionals. This distinction is important. Every child is different. Every diagnosis is different. And every therapy program is carefully adapted to meet individual needs. Still, one question remained difficult for researchers to answer. If the physical movement explains part of the progress, and the emotional bond explains another part, why do so many children become deeply attached to the horses themselves, sometimes after only a few sessions? That answer may lie in something scientists are only beginning to fully understand: the remarkable emotional intelligence of horses. For centuries, people believed horses were guided mostly by instinct. Today, scientists know the story is far more complex. Horses are highly social animals that live in herds, where survival depends on cooperation rather than competition. Inside a herd, every member constantly watches the others. A slight change in posture, a faster heartbeat, a nervous movement, these subtle signals can alert the entire group to potential danger. This remarkable sensitivity didn't evolve to understand humans. It evolved to keep horses alive. Yet when humans began working alongside them thousands of years ago, those same instincts became one of the greatest strengths in the relationship between our two species. Researchers have found that horses are exceptionally skilled at reading nonverbal communication. They pay close attention to breathing, muscle tension, balance, rhythm, and even the confidence behind a person's movements. This is one reason therapists believe many children feel comfortable around them. The horse isn't reacting to labels or expectations. It is responding only to what the child is expressing in that exact moment. For children who often struggle to communicate through words, this creates an interaction that feels natural. Nothing needs to be explained. Nothing needs to be hidden. The horse simply accepts what it perceives. That acceptance often becomes the foundation for trust, and trust opens the door to confidence. Confidence encourages participation, and participation creates opportunities for learning that extend far beyond the riding arena. Perhaps this is why so many families remember the first successful therapy session, not because it looked extraordinary to everyone else, but because, for the first time in a long time, their child seemed completely at peace. And those quiet moments often become the beginning of something much greater. Perhaps the most convincing evidence doesn't come from laboratories. It comes from the families who live this journey every single day. Across the world, parents often describe the same experience. At first, many children are uncertain. Some hesitate to approach the horse. Others become overwhelmed by the unfamiliar environment. Therapists never rush the process. Sometimes the first session isn't about riding at all. It may simply involve watching the horse from a distance, touching its shoulder, brushing its coat, listening to its slow breathing. Building trust always comes before building skills. As confidence grows, each small achievement becomes meaningful. A child who once feared climbing onto the horse now rides with a smile. Another who rarely followed instructions begins guiding the horse through simple exercises. Some children start speaking more during sessions. Others become more willing to interact with therapists and family members after leaving the arena. These moments may seem ordinary to an outside observer, but for parents, they often represent milestones they had hoped to see for years. Therapists celebrate these victories too, not because they happen overnight, but because they are earned through patience, consistency, and hundreds of small steps. Every child's journey is different. Some progress quickly. Others need months before noticeable changes appear. And that is exactly what science would expect. Human development is never identical from one person to another. Still, regardless of the pace, one lesson continues to appear again and again. The greatest breakthroughs rarely happen in a single dramatic moment. They are built quietly. One session, one challenge, one success, and one gentle ride at a time. Perhaps the most convincing evidence doesn't come from laboratories. It comes from the families who live this journey every single day. Across the world, parents often describe the same experience. At first, many children are uncertain. Some hesitate to approach the horse. Others become overwhelmed by the unfamiliar environment. Therapists never rush the process. Sometimes the first session isn't about riding at all. It may simply involve watching the horse from a distance, touching its shoulder, brushing its coat, listening to its slow breathing. Building trust always comes before building skills. As confidence grows, each small achievement becomes meaningful. A child who once feared climbing onto the horse now rides with a smile. Another who rarely followed instructions begins guiding the horse through simple exercises. Some children start speaking more during sessions. Others become more willing to interact with therapists and family members after leaving the arena. These moments may seem ordinary to an outside observer, but for parents, they often represent milestones they had hoped to see for years. Therapists celebrate these victories too, not because they happen overnight, but because they are earned through patience, consistency, and hundreds of small steps. Every child's journey is different. Some progress quickly. Others need months before noticeable changes appear. And that is exactly what science would expect. Human development is never identical from one person to another. Still, regardless of the pace, one lesson continues to appear again and again. The greatest breakthroughs rarely happen in a single dramatic moment. They are built quietly. One session, one challenge, one success, and one gentle ride at a time. As equine-assisted therapy continued to grow, another important question emerged. How long does it take before families begin noticing changes? The answer is different for every child. Some parents describe positive changes after only a few sessions. Others spend months celebrating what might seem like very small achievements. Therapists explain that this is exactly how meaningful development usually works. Progress is rarely dramatic. Instead, it happens through hundreds of tiny improvements that slowly build upon one another. A child who initially refused to touch the horse may eventually brush its mane. Later, that same child may confidently lead the horse with assistance. Weeks later, they may begin following more complex instructions while riding. Each accomplishment becomes the foundation for the next. Because of this, therapy teams carefully set individual goals for every child. Success is never measured by comparing one child to another. It is measured by comparing today's abilities with yesterday's. That philosophy is one of the reasons equine-assisted therapy has earned the respect of so many rehabilitation professionals. The objective is never perfection. The objective is progress, no matter how small. Parents often say that the greatest victories happen after leaving the therapy center. A child who becomes more willing to participate at school, a calmer response to stressful situations, more confidence during daily routines, a stronger sense of independence. These are changes that cannot always be measured with numbers, yet they can completely transform a family's daily life. Perhaps that is why so many parents continue bringing their children back week after week, not because they expect miracles, but because they begin to see something even more meaningful. Hope supported by patience, consistency, and science. And that hope continues to grow with every ride. Today, equine-assisted therapy is practiced in many parts of the world, but researchers continue asking new questions. Which children benefit the most? How can therapy programs become even more effective? What role does the emotional bond with the horse actually play? Every year, new studies help answer some of these questions while raising many others. That is how science moves forward, not by assuming every answer is already known, but by continuing to investigate. One conclusion, however, has remained remarkably consistent. When equine-assisted therapy is guided by qualified professionals and included as part of a comprehensive treatment plan, it can become a powerful tool for helping many children reach goals that once seemed far away. Not because the horse performs miracles, but because it offers something that is becoming increasingly rare in today's world: a calm environment, consistent rhythms, patient interactions, and a relationship built entirely on trust. Perhaps that is why children often remember the horse long after the therapy session has ended, long after they leave the riding arena, long after they return home. For many of them, the horse becomes more than an animal. It becomes a symbol of confidence, a reminder that challenges can be overcome one small step at a time. And maybe that is the greatest lesson these incredible animals have to teach us. Real progress doesn't always happen through dramatic breakthroughs. Sometimes, it begins with a quiet moment, a gentle touch, a slow walk, and the willingness of two very different beings to trust one another. That simple connection has changed countless lives, and it continues to inspire families, therapists, and researchers all around the world. So, why do horses connect so well with children with special needs? After decades of research, scientists have discovered that there isn't a single answer. It is the combination of many remarkable factors working together. The horse's natural movement challenges the body in ways that closely resemble human walking. Its calm and predictable behavior creates an environment where many children feel safe enough to explore new experiences. Its extraordinary sensitivity to body language allows communication without depending only on words. And perhaps most importantly, the relationship develops without judgment. The horse doesn't know a diagnosis. It doesn't see limitations. It simply responds to the person standing in front of it. That may be one of the greatest gifts these animals offer. Not a cure, not a miracle, but an opportunity to grow, to learn, to trust, to discover abilities that may have been hidden beneath fear or uncertainty. Of course, equine-assisted therapy isn't the right solution for every child, and it should always be guided by qualified professionals as part of a broader treatment plan. But for thousands of families around the world, it has become a source of hope supported not only by emotion, but also by years of scientific research and clinical experience. Perhaps that's why horses have remained beside humanity humanity for thousands of years. First as partners in work, then in transportation, later in sports, and now, helping children write new chapters in their own lives. If this story inspired you, subscribe to Country Life and join us as we continue exploring the incredible relationship between horses, science, and the people whose lives they quietly transform every day. Because sometimes, the most powerful connections are the ones that never need words.